Well, I've arrived in Hawke's Bay and today I'm going to visit the iconic Tamata Estate. It's the oldest winery in New Zealand and I'm going to find out their story, see how they make their wine and maybe even give them a hand. After checking out the geothermal pools in Rotorua, we drove down to Taupo and Huka Falls on our way to Hawke's Bay. As well as being the first stop on the classic New Zealand wine trail itinerary, Hawke's Bay happens to be the Art Deco capital of the world, with its cities of Napier and Hastings rebuilt in the style of the early 1920s. It's the second largest wine region in New Zealand after Marlborough, with a dry, temperate climate yielding gorgeous full-bodied red wines. Today, I'm off to visit New Zealand's oldest winery, Tamata Estate. Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
That's
Lovely
great.
to be here.
Yeah, and thank you for having me here at Tamata Estate,
No, pleasure.
which I believe is the oldest winery in New Zealand.
It is, yes. That we date it from 1896 because that's when we first started to sell wine from here. The original family that started Tamata Estate were a family called the Chambers, who came from England originally, but by way of Australia. Made a fortune supplying miners in the goldfields of Victoria, and then came here to New Zealand and bought a very vast tract of land here, and named it Tamata because that's the prominent peak. But originally that was all bushland and everything, and by the 1890s they were beginning to get into planting vineyards and developing a winery and so on. They went and looked at operations in Australia and in California and in
They did
Europe.
International research.
Oh yes,
Was
yes.
that can't have been common?
No,
back then?
not at all. And they brought out a winemaker from Switzerland, imported grape varieties into New Zealand, and that Tamata was the largest winery by 1910, and making great wine by all accounts, exporting to various countries around the world. The Chambers family sold Tamata in the early 1920s. New Zealand had a near prohibition situation in the late 1910s, the 1917 general election. The temperance movement had become very strong, and whilst the country didn't go for all-out prohibition, it became nearly so. So they sold off the winery aspect and its associated vineyards, and it went to a different family and then another family, and those were fairly dark times for the wine industry as a whole in New Zealand and for Tamata as well. My father and mother, together with their business partners, Michael and June Morris, purchased Tamata in 1974, and so became the fourth owners of the winery. They bought it for the three vineyards that came with it, which were tremendous vineyards.
You and your brothers have all returned to the area?
We have, and Hawke's Bay is a lovely place to base yourself. I mean, not just because of the wine, but just a fantastic region overall to live in. But obviously it has a huge array of different soil types and different microclimates, which means that you can produce a great deal of different wines to a really high standard. I mean, obviously we're best known for Coleraine and for Awatea, which are Cabernet Merlot based wines, which because they're the wines we've been making for the longest and they have such a strong reputation within New Zealand and internationally. But also we were one of the pioneers of Syrah in the modern era.
So this was one of the first places that grew what is now one of the most recognisable
grapes out of the area, for sure. And Hawke's Bay is very famous for Chardonnay. Chardonnay is produced right through New Zealand, but this region is really regarded as the top Chardonnay region of the country. And we've been making wine, Elston Chardonnay, here at Tamata from our very finest Chardonnay vineyards for well over 40 years now, and it's regarded as one of the absolute top Chardonnays of the country.
I might kick things off by trying the Chardonnay, and who better to show me than Phil, head winemaker. Hello, Phil.
Hello.
We've got some delicious wines to taste, and we're tasting them in this iconic building.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the oldest.
Yeah, oldest buildings where wine's been continuously made here. First release was in 1896 from vines planted in 1892 at that stage. Yeah.
It's a very historic site that we're on.
Oh, totally.
Speaking of history, you have quite a long history with the winery as well.
I have. I've been here for 28 years now. Yeah, so a lot of the staff have been here for a long time, and that's really important to get to know your soils and your vineyards and the people, and try and get the best expression from the fruit, from the soils and the vineyard. So you've got to get to know them intimately, and that takes time. Every vintage is so different, particularly in Hawke's Bay, which is great. You know, I love vintage. Every time you get grapes, and they're always different one year to the next. So, and that's really cool. Yeah,
That's awesome.
We own all our own vineyards. We only source fruit from Hawke's Bay. Everything's made on site, bottled on site, and then distributed from here as well. So that's quite unique. And I think, you know, to make the best, we've got these 4 sub-regions, different soil types, and from there, with the different climates and that, we can keep everything separate and get the best out of one year from the next year. Yep.
So what have we got in front of us now?
This is the 2018 Elston Chardonnay. It's our showcase wine. It's our premium Chardonnay. Predominantly from the Havelock Hills here on clay and limestone, but also from Chapar Triangle, it's another sub-region. Now they're all offering different fruit profiles, and by the time we put all that together, we've got a really complex and beautifully balanced wine. That's what we're after.
So is this a lighter Chardonnay style, or it's more of that kind of big?
I wouldn't say it's big and fat, it's not certainly old school. It's all about expressing your fruit first and building up complexity with what we call lees contact, the solids from the fruit, the various yeast that we use, and then oak and barrel ferment to add further complexity. But you know, it's about balance. So if you've got a lot of balance to the wine, you're going to see a lot of subtleties. And to me, a good glass of wine keeps you interested, keeps you captured. And to do that, it's got to have this sort of Moorish savoury characteristic, and that's what we're really trying to go for.
That's what we're looking for here.
Yeah.
So on the nose, it's got.
Typically, Elston Chardonnay, what we're trying to achieve is that sort of really bright, ripe citrus characters, sort of from limes, lemons, grapefruit, and then into the sort of stone fruit characteristics. Going into sort of a little bit of wet stone, which people refer to as that sort of terroir or mineral character. There's hints of that. And then there's the sort of the charry and the smoky sort of vanilla characteristics coming from the barrel ferment, a little bit of cedar, but it's subtle, it's just in there behind, so it's keeping you interested. Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot to go on, yeah. And then that will follow through into the palate. But then you see other things like acid and the sort of salinity on the finish of the wine. And if you get all that acidity and sweetness of fruit, so it's dry, but the ripeness of fruit, you've got a lovely wine. Yep.
All right, well, let's do it.
Cheers.
That's really the balance and it's very fresh.
Yeah, that's acidity. It keeps the wine alive, and the key thing is all these wines here are hand-picked fruit, so the fruit's in really good condition. My belief is the fruit's in good condition, you look after it in the winery, the wine's going to be in good condition, and then it will age, and it will age gracefully. Tomatoes, wines and reputation is built around that, you know, from reds and whites, that our wines will age. They're very balanced and delicate and savoury, but they'll age gracefully and become more and more digestible as time goes on.
That's lovely. So how will this particular vintage age?
It will fill out and it'll be sort of more textural, I guess, and richer in the mid-palate. And then you'll just see, you know, as all wines are, they're sort of what we call primary, they're very sort of fresh initially, and then become secondary and tertiary in that, and you'll get these sort of older aging characteristics. So you'll start to see sort of subtle nougat notes, it's a little bit more smokiness and that, but it will keep fresh for quite a number of years, so it'll be great drinking about 5 years' time. Yeah, we're in this sort of temperate maritime type climate. Every vintage is so, and people collect our wines because, you know, one year, one vintage is different than the other. And it's always a great talking point. That's what I love about wine. It's not just what's in the wine glass, it's the vintage, and it creates conversation. Yeah.
So this barrel hall is very old.
Yeah, this part of the winery was built in 1871. This cellar's got particularly fond memories, and this is where, when I originally came here, we started sort of barrel fermenting our Cape Crest, our Sauvignon Blanc. This room here, which is originally called the stables, because this is where they used to have the horses, and now we call it the stained glass cellar for obvious reasons.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah, it is a beautiful cellar. Very, very thick walls, which is good for temperature control. Yeah, there's just a feeling in here everybody loves, and we often do a lot of barrel fermented whites in here, so it's really good coming in here at vintage time, smelling the wines, fermenting in barrel, and whether it's the fruit or the oak, and it's exciting times. I just love it.
With all the wine I'm enjoying here, it's only fair I pitch in a little. After 6 seasons, apparently hosting the show is no longer enough, and it's time for me to do some actual work.
So what we're trying to do is get the net covered over all the canopy as well as the grapes, while getting it low to like the irrigation line. So we see this black line in the middle, we're going to try to keep that in the middle.
The black line. So we're pulling down the netting. Raison started, so the grapes have started to ripen. So the birds and the bugs are all keen to have a go. So this net is going to protect them. Thank you, Shane, for pointing that out. My net was too short. It was going to blow away, so I'm pulling it out.
Don't be scared of the net.
Don't be scared of the net. How am I looking now?
If we could go a touch lower.
A touch lower? Okay.
You know, you got to be one with the net, I think. You know, you can't just shy away.
Get in sync with the net. Okay. I got totally at one with the net. It wrapped itself around my watch.
Oh, that's the spirit.
Does it help if you're tall?
It does.
It does. It helps. Yeah. Okay. What about if there's a cameraman standing directly where you're trying to put the net? Does that help?
That's also ideal, yeah.
Yeah, great.
That looks good, nice and low.
I don't know if you picked that up on camera, but Sean just said that looks good about my netting. He said that looks good.
We go along and clip underneath after the fact.
Oh, so you got to double back. Right, yeah. I see what you mean. And you can admire my handiwork.
Exactly, yeah.
Upper body strength. Yep, thanks Shane.
Thanks Shane. We'll keep an eye out for this coleraine.
Oh, yeah. Oh God, is this the coleraine block too?
Top fruit. Yeah.
Oh good, this is the coleraine vine, so.
We saved the best for you.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah.
We have this ability to produce an array of very high quality wines. And our most recent addition to that is actually Alma Pinot Noir, which honours our mother's side of the family, and that Alma is a reference to her great-grandfather, who was a hero of the Battle of Alma in the Crimea. But that wine is a wine that's coming from 20-year-old Pinot Noir vines that we've been obviously growing for a long time in our vineyards. But we've started to produce just in the last year, and so it's the most recent addition to our range of wines.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's very exciting. The quality of it has become so exceptional that we recognised that we really had to put that into one of our very top wines, and so we've released this Alma Pinot Noir, and that's an exciting feature for us going forward.
All right, so we've got the 2018 Pinot Noir.
Correct.
Yep. And this is a newer
2018 Alma. It's our showcase Pinot. Tomato have always been renowned for our flagship wine, our Bordeaux Red, which is Cabernet Sauvignon based. So for Tomato to release a Pinot, we have done a little bit in the past, but not for release. But my first vintage was actually in Burgundy in 1992. I just had a passion from it then. That was after having gone to Bordeaux, but yeah, so
now you get to show the world. It
stemmed from there, yeah, exactly, and I love it. So 2018, these are coming from 20-year-old vines, which we planted, and we wanted to make sure that when we did release a Pinot from Tomato, it came from some older vine material, but it had to be really good. It's a single vineyard wine, so it does come specifically from the Dartmoor sub-region, the Woodthorpe vineyard. But the soil type is really important with a lot of the wines, and so we've got this sort of top soil, which is a lot of sandy loam with some volcanic material in it, some ash and some iron.
It's quite rich topsoil.
Yeah, and rich in microbes. And that topsoil gives us that sort of fineness and sapidity of tannins, but it gives us florals and really good expression of fruit characteristics. some people call porosity, which is, I love that word because it covers everything. And then with the stones underneath that soil, and that's also really important because it's quite free draining. So it means that we can put the vine under some stress and then build up concentration and richness in the palate. So those two put together, it really is working well. If I was to compare, I'd go back to areas like Sonoma and maybe in Burgundy, Volnay, Pommard, because it's quite a structural, rich, big wine.
Okay, great. Sounds delicious.
Cool.
It's almost got like a blackberry note to it.
Yeah, there's sort of there's certainly dark fruits, but there's a lovely sort of floral notes to it too, you know, sort of the rose petals, the lavender, and then you get into the sort of red fruits, the prune, you know, fresh prune, but there's also this sort of raspberry and black cherry syrup, darker sort of characteristics. And then there's hints of that sort of cinnamon spice as well, which is really important. Yeah.
It smells really good. It's quite savoury, quite a dry finish.
Yeah, the wine is dry. All our wines we make here are dry. Also this sweetness, and that's coming from the fruit. Low crop vines, really not doing a lot to the wine in the winery. If you've got good fruit, it's just a matter of respecting it, and you're going from there, really.
How long do you barrel it for?
This has been barreled for 11 months. Yep. There's a mixture of new and old oak, and that's really important because you know you don't want too much new oak, otherwise it's going to swallow all the fruit. You want to see the fruit foremost, and then the complexity of the barrels in behind. This wine, Pinot is quite different than any other wine we make here. So it's still all hand-picked fruit. It's bunch sorted and berry sorted in the winery. It goes into tanks where we ferment it, and then it goes to barrel for a secondary ferment, then aged here for 11 months. It's got to be textural in the mouth, you know, this sort of softness, but the tannins, you notice that there's a sort of delicate, sort of silky or velvety, fine all the way through. And if that gets at the back of the mouth and sits there and lingers, I think you've achieved a good wine.
They've both got quite a long finish to them.
Yeah, very structural, but very palatable, you know, instantly appealing. Wines do come round, but if they're instantly appealing and they're good, they're going to just get better and better. That's what
Drink
we love.
to that.
Cheers.
How far back are these crates? Like, this looks like an older logo.
Yeah, some of these go back to 1896. We've got some wines here. John's 70th, we pulled out some between 1896 and 1905.
And
some clarets and fortifieds.
They were drinkable?
Yeah, it took a few to get a good one, but they still had colour, tannin and sweetness, so, you know, it was really exciting. We had some Madeiras that John had collected because it's one of his favourite wine styles, and the oldest one of those was about 1870. Yeah, so it was a great 3 days of wine tasting.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, wow!
1897.
Look at that.
Yeah. So we opened a few of these for John's 70th, and as I say, it took a few to get some good ones, but they were awesome. Yeah, really cool.
Is that cork? Does that cork come out? Can we smell it? No? Yes, we can.
Yeah, well, you can. What we do here is sometimes, though, to be fair, we do recorking. We have a recorking clinic, so the corks only go for so length of time, and it's a facility we provide to our Coleraine Club customers, you know, who follow our wine. And if they've had their Coleraine for a certain length of time and they want it to looked at and recorked, we offer a service and we'll do it. They've just got to send wine here. And,
that smells really good.
Really cool.
Coleraine is a very cellar-worthy wine. It's always been a very famous wine in New Zealand, right from the very first vintage. The quality of it's been very high over all the vintages over a very long period of time, and the wine develops over a long period of time in bottle. And the very first vintage, 82, still drinks very well today. So because of that, it dominates the collection scene, and so you see people that build up multiple vintages of it and so on. And this was a completely unbroken collection of every single vintage of Coleraine that came to market just a few years ago from a very avid collector who'd maintained it impeccably in wonderful condition. And it was very, very highly sought after at auction when it came to market, and took a record market position for a collection of any wine in New Zealand. and as such reached a lot of fame. Since then I think there's been 2 or 3 other collections similar that have come to market and have achieved similar kind of results. In fact, I think that Broken's been broken a few times. Yeah.
Where does the name come from?
My father, when he lives at the Coleraine Vineyard and his home features on the label, and my father had come, his ancestors had come out of Northern Ireland, from the city of Coleraine, and every home he'd ever lived in had been named Coleraine and had a nameplate from the city of Coleraine on it. So when he built his home on that vineyard, naturally for him he called it Coleraine, and when it came to make a wine off it, he wanted to call it Coleraine as well. So he contacted the city council in Ireland and asked them if they were okay with him using the name, and we've maintained very good relations with the Coleraine City Council
every now and then.
Yeah, and they've visited us numerous times here at the winery and things, and we've had a great relationship, and the wine sells pretty well in Coleraine as well.
I bet it does. So these are all your Coleraines dating back to
Yeah, dating back
vintage?
to the original one, which is Coleraine was, the first release was in 1982. So occasionally we do vertical Coleraine. The last one we did was 25 years on from the 82.
Oh, wow.
We don't make it every vintage. You know, there's a few vintages since I've been here we haven't made it if it's not up to standard. But yeah, to have a flight of 25 wines of Coleraine was absolutely amazing. Yeah, it was cool.
Onto the flagship.
2018 Coleraine.
And it's wrapped.
Yeah, a lot of work obviously gone in the vineyards, right through the winemaking, but also, you know, in its packaging as well. All gone into wooden boxes and hand wrapped, and you know, we've gone this far, we might as well go all the way.
Yeah.
It's been a great vintage 2018 for Tomato Estate, and it's exciting to get it into the market, really, you know, from everybody's point of view. You know, it's always a team effort.
And still under cork.
Yeah, it's still under cork. Very traditional, I think. We like tradition. Again, we're trialling a lot of other closures and that, but we love cork, and we spend a lot of money on it. Each individual cork is tested as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, you know,
That's
a lot of
yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our philosophy is with Coleraine, Long Bordeaux. It's a blend of varieties: Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and the belief is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So when you put those three together, you're actually getting something else happening in the bottle again that makes the wine even more complete. Yeah, because each of those varieties offer something different, but they complement one another and then bring out something else that you wouldn't see individually. So I guess what we're looking for is an expression of all those three put together. The Cabernet Franc with its sort of red fruit and floral and scents. There's a sort of nice sort of cold tea characteristic to that Cabernet Franc. And then the Merlot there is there to sort of rich out the mid palate, give it some flesh and richness, and that doesn't have as much tannin and structure. And so there's a lot of sweetness and sort of that sort of...
Like a marzipan almost.
Yeah, there's certainly that coming through. And then Cabernet Sauvignon, which is the base of it. It's so complex varietally. And I think what I really love about Cabernet and from our sites here, we're getting this marine sort of oyster shell sort of tapenade character. There's a freshness to the wine, but also a richness, and that's critical. The grapes, when they come in, they've got a little bloom on them, and they just look good. They're bunch sorted. The freshness of the berry and the acidity will keep the wine alive, and I think the acidity and the freshness of the wine gives you focus to the wine. You can see all those subtle nuances I was just talking about, and if you take it too far and it goes overripe, you'll lose that freshness and you'll lose that purity, and then you won't see those subtleties.
It's all about balance.
Yeah, again, yeah. Yeah.
It's savoury up front, very savoury.
Very savoury. A great wine is quite thought-provoking. You know, you're sort of going, oh, what's going on? And when you're in a room with people and they've each got a different comment, and everybody's probably correct when you get to these good wines because there's so much going on, and if someone can see something in it, they're probably quite correct. And it just gets better, you know. From 10 years on, we really recommend to drink Coleraine. Very approachable now. Which is great.
Delicious.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, totally.
You can taste that like the balance you're talking about. You can taste that structure of the oak behind it, but all of those sort of notes kind of sitting alongside each other.
And that's so complex, and you know you've got the Cabernet just right then. Fantastic.
You've been getting it just right for quite a while, Phil.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot of trial work, and the future's really exciting. You know, we're doing a lot of work in the vineyards at the moment and trial work in the winery. So we've got exciting times going ahead. It's just fantastic, yeah.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Thanks, Phil.
That's all right. Best thing about wine is sharing with other people.
I agree.
Yeah.
I've had such a great time at Hawke's Bay visiting Tamata Estate. There is so much more of my tour of New Zealand to come. Don't forget, if you've missed an episode, you can catch up online on our YouTube channel, and I will see you next episode for the Cellar Door New Zealand.
Nice. So you got it.
Yeah, I'm a pro.
There you go.
What do you think, Sean? Am I a natural?
No, there's space to grow, but I see some real
Space to
potential.
grow. That's what my teachers all said.
Yeah.